In 1966, radios across America were blasting the song, "I Saw Her Again," and everyone thought it was just another happy pop hit. But no one knew that the song was actually a torture device. The man who wrote it, John Phillips, forced his wife, Michelle Phillips, to sing it at every concert. Why? Because the song described the night Michelle was caught in bed with the band's other male member. John took pleasure in making his wife sing about her own betrayal, night after night, in front of thousands of people. Hollywood may seem accustomed to scandals, but the story of Michelle Phillips left the entire entertainment world speechless. She was the golden girl of the 60s, the face that launched 1,000 dreams. But behind that angelic face, Michelle was often at the center of the drama. She wasn't just an innocent bystander in the rock and roll lifestyle. She was the storm itself. To understand how we got to that twisted love triangle, we have to go back. Michelle never lived an ordinary life. Her world collapsed early when her mother died suddenly from a brain aneurysm when Michelle was only 5. She was raised by her father, a free-spirited bohemian who brought home one woman after another with an obsessive frequency. Every night, behind closed doors, a young Michelle heard sounds that left her confused. But she learned a crucial lesson early on. The adult world was chaotic, and if she wanted to survive, she had to be strong. And she was. By the time she was a teenager, she wasn't looking for a Prince Charming. She was looking for freedom. In 1961, at just 16 years old, fate led her to John Phillips. John was 25, the charismatic leader of the folk group The Journeymen. He was brilliant, tall, and commanded every room he walked into. There was just one problem. He was married to a high society dancer named Susan Adams and had 2 children. But for Michelle, raised in a home without boundaries, this wasn't an obstacle. It was a challenge. She loved like she was diving into an abyss. She literally walked up to John's wife's doorstep and told her, "I'm in love with your husband." Susan, tired of John's serial cheating, just invited the girl in and told her she was simply the newest one. But she wasn't just the newest one. She was the one. John Phillips, the notorious womanizer, fell as fiercely for Michelle as she did for him. He later wrote that it was as if she stepped out of a dream and into my life. They married in 1962, and that's when the dream turned into a gilded cage. John Phillips was a musical genius, often hailed as someone with an uncanny ability to shape trends. But alongside that brilliance came extreme volatility and a terrifying need for control. To many, he was like a charming snake oil salesman, persuasive and manipulative. He didn't just want a wife. He wanted a creation. Michelle had just signed a modeling contract. She was ready to be independent, but John wouldn't allow it. He forced her to give it up. He pulled her into his band, gave her vocal lessons, and kept her by his side like a shadow. He controlled her image. He controlled her music. On tour, he demanded she stay in supervised dorms, never out of his sight for a moment. He treated her like a possession, a beautiful doll that only he could play with. But you can't keep a wild spirit in a cage forever. Eventually, she's going to bite the hand that feeds her. Enter Denny Doherty, the tenor with the fragile lute-playing troubadour aura, and Cass Elliot, the powerhouse voice. Together, they formed the Mamas and the Papas. The harmonies were perfect, but the relationships were a mess. Even before the band officially launched, the cracks were showing. Michelle was tired of John's obsession and control. Instead of submitting, she began to rebel. Her first act of war wasn't with Denny. It was with a man named Russ Titleman. It was a clandestine affair, a burning secret. For the first time, Michelle wasn't the one being controlled. She was the one breaking the rules. When John found out, he didn't just get mad. He got dangerous. He called Russ and told him, "Another guy might be waiting outside your door with a shotgun." Everyone knew John wasn't joking. Russ, terrified, ended things. But Michelle? She showed not a shred of remorse. She had grown up viewing sex as natural, not shameful. John was furious. He wrote the song Go Where You Want to Go as a bitter jab at her. But that was just the warm-up. The real bomb was about to drop. And it was going to drop right inside the band. If the affair with Russ was a crack in the foundation, Michelle's next move threatened to bring the whole house down. She set her sights on Denny Doherty. Denny was everything John wasn't. He was gentle. He was kind. He was the shoulder to cry on. But he was also John's best friend. Countless rehearsals were charged with unspoken tension. The glances across the microphone, the accidental touches. The electricity in the room was thick enough to choke on. They both knew it was wrong. They both knew it would destroy the band. But they couldn't resist each other. Now, before we get to the moment that shattered the group, I have to ask, do you think John Phillips already knew? Can a husband sense when his wife and his best friend are falling in love right in front of him? If you want to uncover more dark secrets from the golden age of Hollywood that they tried to hide from you, hit that subscribe button right now. We are just getting started. The affair didn't stay secret for long, and when John found out, his reaction was chilling. He didn't come with a shotgun this time. He did something far more manipulative. He turned his pain into their paycheck. He wrote, "I saw her again." Imagine the scene. John brings the sheet music into the studio. He hands it to Denny. He hands it to Michelle. And he says, "Let's record this. I saw her again last night, and you know that I shouldn't. To string her along's just not right. If I can't behave." He made Denny sing about his own guilt. He made Michelle harmonize on her own betrayal. It was a masterclass in emotional manipulation. But if John thought this public humiliation would tame Michelle Phillips, he was dead wrong. The wound wouldn't heal so easily. The tension escalated until John and Michelle decided to separate. And that is when Michelle decided to stop hiding. If John wanted a show, she was going to give him a show he would never forget. She started seeing Gene Clark from the Birds. And this time, she wasn't going to be discreet. One night, at a Mamas and the Papas concert, the crowd was roaring. But John Phillips was looking at only one thing. In the front row, wearing a blazing red shirt, sat Gene Clark. He was sitting there like he owned the place, like he owned her. Michelle saw him, and suddenly, she was flooded with confidence. She sang every note, directed every glance, right at Gene in the front row, while her husband, the man who tried to control her every breath, watched helplessly from the wings. It was a moment of absolute triumph for Michelle. But for John, it was the final humiliation. As the curtain fell that night, the music stopped. But the screaming was just beginning. John had reached his breaking point. He looked at Michelle, then he looked at the band. And he made a decision that would change rock history forever. After the show, the verdict was swift and brutal. John Phillips didn't just want a divorce. He wanted to erase her. He fired Michelle from the band she helped create. But the most painful cut didn't come from John. It came from Denny. Michelle turned to the other members, her friends, her lovers, looking for support. She looked at Denny Doherty, the man she had risked everything for. And what did he do? He sided with John. In an instant, she was cast out. The golden girl was now in exile. John didn't waste time. He replaced her with Jill Gibson, a producer's girlfriend who looked enough like Michelle to fool the distant fans. That was the moment Michelle realized they were serious. They were going to replace her like a broken guitar string. But Michelle Phillips wasn't the type to fade away quietly. She was furious. She stormed into one of the Mamas and the Papas recording sessions like a hurricane. She screamed that she would bury them all. The tension was so high that she even tried to physically hit Denny Doherty, the man she once loved, now the man who betrayed her. Visual, the band reuniting. A seemingly happy photo, but with a crack effect down the middle. The Mamas and the Papas were a band steeped in turmoil. And strangely, the chaos was their fuel. Despite the screaming, the fighting, and the replacement attempts, the fans wanted Michelle. The magic wasn't the same without her. Eventually, they let her rejoin the group. For a brief moment, it looked like a happy ending. They performed at the legendary Monterey Pop Festival. They bought a luxurious mansion in Bel Air. Success poured in like a flood. But behind the gilded mansion doors, the darkness was growing. John Phillips had tightened his grip more than ever. Cass Elliott's sister once said that stepping into that house felt gloomy, like the air was suffocating. Visitors claimed John wouldn't even let Michelle leave the room, keeping her under what felt like house arrest. Michelle has never revealed everything that happened in that house, but the little she shared is chilling. She admitted that John once physically assaulted her so badly she had to be hospitalized. In 1968, Michelle made the most painful yet necessary decision of her life. She filed for divorce. Most people would run away from a controlling, dangerous man and look for safety, right? Not Michelle Phillips. It seems she had an addiction to danger, because the man she ran to next wasn't a savior. He was a stick of dynamite. His name was Dennis Hopper, the director of Easy Rider, a legendary wild child with a reputation as volatile as it was extreme. Michelle met him on the set of the last movie in Peru. The set was drenched in alcohol, drugs, and outbursts. Instead of keeping her distance, Michelle plunged right in. She later admitted it was her Florence Nightingale instinct, the urge to save a broken man. They got married on Halloween night in 1970. The ceremony was bizarre, lit by candles and paper bags, with Hopper reading from the Gospel of Thomas like a madman. The next morning, Hopper woke up so hungover he didn't even recognize the bride lying next to him. The marriage lasted exactly 8 days. Why? Because Hopper was obsessed with guns. He once fired shots inside the house, leaving Michelle and her young daughter frozen in terror. On another night, in a drug-fueled haze, he handcuffed Michelle and restrained her, claiming she was a witch. That was the wake-up call. Her own father dragged her to a lawyer and told her, "Men like that never change." Michelle survived John. She survived Denny. And she survived Dennis. But there was one secret left. One final mystery that tied her to the past. Michelle remained close to Cass Elliott. They were the survivors of the band. They shared almost everything. But there was one thing Cass never told anyone: the identity of her daughter's biological father. It was the greatest mystery in rock history. In the summer of 1974, by the pool, Michelle finally gathered the courage to ask, "Cass, who is it?" Cass just smiled that mysterious smile and said, "I'll tell you when I get back from my London show." Cass never got to keep that promise. She died suddenly in London at the age of 32. Michelle Phillips was left alone, the last witness to the madness. The woman who uncovered the truth years later, a truth she described as a bomb dropped right in the heart. Michelle Phillips was no stranger to conflict, addiction, and dangerous relationships. She was the center of the drama. But unlike so many others from that era, unlike Cass, unlike John, unlike Denny, she didn't let the darkness consume her. She walked through the fire, and she came out the other side. The mamas and the papas sang about California dreamin', but for Michelle, the reality was a Hollywood nightmare. She wanted love, they wanted control. She wanted freedom, they wanted a muse. If you think this story was wild, wait until you hear what happened behind the scenes of the Brady Bunch. Click this video right here to see why Marsha Brady wasn't as innocent as she looked. And don't forget to hit subscribe, because in Hollywood, the truth is always stranger than the rumor.